Welcome to Healthy Living. On this episode, my fascinating interview with Molly CARMEL, the founder of a successful weight loss clinic and author of the book, Breaking Up with Sugar. Molly was morbidly obese nearly her entire life. Her highest weight, 325 pounds. She tried every diet. Nothing worked until 10 years ago when she lost the weight and kept it off after realizing she was addicted to sugar and flour.
The story was so terrible. Like, it just was filled with so much like mud and awfulness. And it always reminds me about how you never know what's really happening. And I always, because when I look back on it and I look at what I'm able to do today, every little part of that story where I couldn't find the right help, or I was like ready to not want to live anymore, or I just felt so dark and so hopeless in that moment, like none of it made an ounce of sense. And today, it makes me so able to find compassion, but more importantly, like help people find solution. Like knowing what's out there and knowing how things are getting done, and then knowing how I found my own solution allows for me to be of the most help to people. And so I always think about that path, and when I was on it, it's like it didn't make an ounce of sense, right? And today it makes all the sense.
I understand.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think people always say, you know, like, how did this happen to me? How did this happen to me? And for me, I was a perfect storm of this because I came from an incredibly obese family. So I came with these genes.
Talk about that a little, your childhood and your family.
Well, my father's side of the family, it was all enormously obese from the Central Valley of California. On my mother's side of the family, a little bit of weight problems, but certainly my paternal genes really came in and helped to make me into the 325-pound person that I eventually became. So I came to this genetically, and then when I was 3 years old, my father died really tragically. He died in a car accident, and you know, by the time I was 4, I was turning to food for all the things, right? I was turning it to comfort, and I was hiding food already, and I was really obsessed with food, and certainly not carrots and cucumbers, right? I was about, you know, the cookies, and I know I was taking the food, and if there was a party, I'd be like, oh, how much can I get and where can I get it? And so in that way, there was certainly this biological piece, but a serious emotional and spiritual piece for me as well that I think just started to really take traction. And the food was my best friend. It was my solace, and it was all of the things. And I would say even today, thank goodness for it, right? Because it got me through some really hard times. And then, like every abusive relationship, ended up turning on me. And that's the story. And so my mother had a really obese 7-year-old, and she didn't know what to do about it. And so she took me to a nutritionist, which I think was like, I think it must be so hard for parents to know what to do. Yeah. And I think that was a great idea by her. It just wasn't the right solution for me. And I knew it. I can tell you when I was 7 years old, and they were sort of just talking to me about like portion sizes. Like, that wasn't my problem. My problem was not like understanding how much food I should eat. I wish that was my problem, right? I wish I was like, oh, just eat less. What a wonderful idea. I actually couldn't stop eating, right? And I knew it. So, you know, I failed right out of that hospital nutrition program. And then by the time I was 11, I was in a Weight Watchers meeting, and I was the youngest kid there. And again, I think best intentions. And when I think about a relationship with food, you know, a relationship with food and a relationship with yourself go side by side, right? Because by the time I was 11 and at a Weight Watchers meeting, I knew in my heart, I couldn't tell the truth in my journal, right? I couldn't show my Weight Watchers leader like, oh, well, you know, I ate all of the food by lunch. So I had started lying then, and I was lying at home, right? I was stealing food, and and I think about that when I think about my relationship with myself, which is so different today than certainly it was when I was, you know, in the depths of this thing. And I think when you start to lie to yourself so early and you start to do these really unestimable things, it's really hard to have self-esteem, right? And the opposite applies, right? Because when we start to do all these esteemable things, we get this relationship with ourselves back. And so I think healing your relationship with food and healing your relationship with yourself go hand in hand. They go hand in hand, without question. So, you know, that story of like me going on a diet and then, you know, the diet wins, I lose, so on, so on, so on. And my mother, you know, we went to the weight loss camps, of course we did, which were so fun. But again, all they were doing was like serving me less food. And so I was sitting at these weight loss camps being like, I'm gonna go home and gain all this weight back and more. I knew it. And I remember in freshman year, I came back and it was like so exciting because for the first time in my life, I fit into Gap jeans. And I remember it so well that by October, the button would go over and over and the button popped. And it was humiliating. It was humiliating. And I didn't have anything else to do, right? I had no skills, I didn't know anything. And so I just gained all the weight back and more. And so I was like a weight loss camp recidivist and a Weight Watcher. And I was so, you know, gosh, to be 15 years old and not hopeless, right? It's just a terrible way to live. Just a terrible way to live. And, but the only thing that did happen was that when I was at that weight loss camp, somewhere deep inside of me, in my spirit, I really knew like I was supposed to do something about this. Like I really had this thought like, this isn't running right. At 13, you know, most kids just like want to be actresses, right? And they want to, you know, I just was like, you have to fix this, Molly. This is your job. I knew it, like I divinely knew it. And then that way, that's why the path makes sense to me. It was wretched, you know, and it kept on going from there, you know, and I went to college and you know, every now and then I'd have like a little bit of success, right? Mostly from really unhealthy ways, right? Like over-exercising or, you know, really, really restricting food. And like anybody who really knows the story knows like it always comes back to get you, right? The house always wins. And so I would have these moments of peace, right? Where I was like, okay, I got this. And then, you know, it would come right back and attack me worse. So it was like I'd have these moments of like serenity and peace, like, oh my God, maybe it's over. And then it would just come back worse, which I think is so many people's experience of the demoralization of gaining your weight back. It got really bad, obviously. And thank God, because I'm here doing this beautiful work. And my grandmother, who was just the most wonderful woman, she called my mother up after she saw Carney Wilson having gastric bypass surgery on Oprah, and she was not asking me whether or not I was going to be getting bariatric surgery. She was telling me I was going to get bariatric surgery. And like so many people, I was full of shame and I was full of this, but I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I was 325 pounds. I had to get into the shower sideways. You know, I stopped wearing underwear completely because back in those days, I didn't know where to buy underwear that would fit me. Like I stopped wearing shoes that tied because I couldn't tie my shoes. You know, I had rolls of fat that had an odor to it that only those of us who know, right? And it was as dark, and I couldn't stop eating. And I was stealing food from the people I lived with, and I was ordering Chinese. It was so unmanageable that when my grandmother said, "This is what you're doing," I was like, okay. And that surgery is a tool, and it's also a medical intervention, right? Those are the two things that my takeaway from my bariatric surgery was it was a tool, but it's also a medical intervention. And I don't have just a physical problem. I have a psychological problem and I have a spiritual problem. And if this isn't solved on all of those levels, it's hard to maintain it. And I gained back probably half of that weight from bariatric surgery. And then I really didn't know what to do. When I was gaining my weight back from that bariatric surgery, I would say that the only thing worse than being morbidly obese is gaining weight back after being morbidly obese. It's a different kind of failure. It's a different kind of shame. it's like one of the most toxic feelings of shame I've ever had in my life. Because I was like, oh, look at me, I did it. Famous last words. Look at me, I did it.
Although Molly was feeling suicidal after gaining back the weight she lost after bariatric surgery, it was at that lowest point in her life when she discovered the key to her lasting weight loss. The details when we return.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy.
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times best-selling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Molly CARMEL felt suicidal because of her inability to control her eating. But it was then that she finally experienced her breakthrough, that she had a sugar addiction, and it needed to be treated like any other addiction. She needed to go without sugar altogether. Also, flour, because it acts just like sugar in our bodies. Her discovery came after a series of events, starting with an encounter at an overeaters support group.
But I made a friend there, and she didn't eat sugar and flour. And I was like, oh, not me. You know, we protect our substance, you know, we protect. And I was like, good for you. Yeah. Like, never will I do this. Never will I do this. But I watched her, and she just had this neutrality and loving relationship with food that like a seed was planted. Like a little mustard seed. Thank goodness for that little mustard seed that woman gave me, you know? And then simultaneously, my brother, who's like this big guy, stopped eating sugar. I think more on like a cleanse, but like, I was like, well, and then I'm a scientist, right? I mean, I'm a scientist, and I dug into some research, and I read Dr. Robert Lustig's work, and I was like, And then I just leapt in. I leapt in, and about 10 days in, well, I had some detox, and I'm an addictions therapist by trade, and an eating disorder therapist by trade. And when I started to have the detox, I was like, uh-oh. Because if you're having detox, that means you have the thing. You know what I mean? If you're detoxing from a drug, it's likely you're addicted to it. I think that's what the drug does, right? That's what the drug is made to do. The drug doesn't want to go anywhere. So, you know, this abusive lover of sugar and flour is tapped into your brain being like, oh, no, you can't live without me. I mean, think about an abuser. It's like, oh, you think you can get on without me, huh? You're a nothing. You're a nobody, right? And if you're an outside perspective, if you're watching that movie, you're like, get out of there, girl. You're fine. You're amazing. But you're stuck. You're being held captive. This is terrorism in your body. And that's what the sugar and the flour wants you to believe. It wants you to believe you're stuck. It wants you to believe it can't live without you. I mean, I haven't had sugar or flour in 10 years. At our clinic, The Beacon, when people will come in, like, so we'll give them their personalized food plan, and then they come back the next week and they'll say, I have such a headache, and I'm so tired, and I'm so emotional. And we'll say, oh my God, that's so exciting. You're going through withdrawal, right? Because it's hard to remember, but withdrawal doesn't happen forever, right? And so of course, like, you're giving up a substance. And I think it's both physical and emotional, right? I really want to say that. But the physical stuff of sweating and being really tired and, you know, and wanting to sleep a lot and being on edge emotionally, it's a real thing. And we actually have a handout, and it's in the book, about sort of these tips that people should use when they're going through this withdrawal, like, try not to overplan your life. Try to really honor the sleep to the extent that you're able. Because it's a real thing, and it passes. You want to know the way it passes, though? So if we don't go back to the sugar, or else we're in this perpetual cycle. And that's actually a really interesting thing too, is that what I've also seen happen to people is that they give up sugar and flour, they hit withdrawal, they go back to the sugar, and then they feel better. And so what they think is giving up sugar is just not letting the symptoms of withdrawal ride their course, right? Because it ends, I promise. Like, I'm not in withdrawal right now. I mean, it's hard to say, because in my experience, I've actually seen it be anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks. Yes. So some people have some lasting effects, but it ends. The point is, no, you know, you're not sitting in withdrawal for the rest of your life. You're sitting in a big, beautiful life for the rest of your life, you know, free from this demon, really. I gave up sugar and flour that wasn't combined with fiber, right? So I gave up all sugar and flour that wasn't like dairy and wasn't fruit, and yeah, that's about right. And so I still had whole grains and quinoa and oatmeal and fruit. And I mean, again, the thing I do then is the thing I do now. There's not a minute in my life where I think, oh, I hate this food. I'm always like, yeah, is it lunch? I'm so excited. I can't wait to have this thing, right? So I certainly gave up like the big ticket items, right? I gave up cookies, cake, candy, ice cream, bread, pasta, pizza. But sugar is a tricky, tricky, tricky little abuser, because it really is everywhere, right? So then I gave up ketchup, I gave up teriyaki sauce, I gave up a lot of salad dressings, I had to start to read ingredients, and a nutritionist friend of mine shared that when sugar is the 5th ingredient or after, you know, is pretty good to go. And frankly, which I think is not prescribed in dieting, I had to do a lot of experimentation, right? Like, I would eat something and I'd be like, God, I really want more of it. And I'd say, oh, I guess I probably shouldn't eat that anymore.
When we come back, Molly shares one of the most important tips to defeating a sugar addiction.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
In her book, Breaking Up with Sugar, author Molly CARMEL points out that we have somewhat of a relationship with food. She reminds us that mistakes are a part of any relationship, and when mistakes happen, we need to minimize the damage and get back on track.
It's not as though I have not had a lapse on sugar and flour in 10 years, okay? But like I read about in the book, I've gotten right back on in the moment. And sometimes I need to ask some friends for help. You know, sometimes I need to go back to my real basics, like the real basic thing in my program, right? But that's what a relationship is. That's what a relationship is. They have hard times. They have times of growth, right? They have times of change. And this book really talks about that. This book really gets to you creating your version of what I prescribe to you. I had this moment when I had given up sugar and flour where I was in my office and someone had some nuts. And it wasn't time to eat, and I took a big handful of nuts and I ate it. And I had that thing happen, and I was like, well, the game is on. And something intervened and said, Molly, I think if you just have dinner tonight, just go right back on track right now. I bet you nothing happens. And wouldn't you know it, that's what happened, right? And so I think that, again, I think this idea of divorcing dieting and this idea of staying the course and getting right back on when you make a mistake. By the way, this is good orderly direction. We just don't use it in our relationship with food, right? There's no relationship you have in your life where you don't scream at your husband and then say, honey, I'm so sorry, that won't happen again, right? And then you get right back on course. And that's exactly what we need to do with food. And I think something that I talk about so constantly, the two things that nobody's talking about is well, what's an alternative to being perfect? How do I mess up in a way that doesn't derail me? The relationship that we have with food is so crazy, right? It's we make a mistake with our perfect food plan, and it's like we get a flat tire and we slice all 4 tires and we leave the car in the middle of the road, right? It's like I have a bite of a cookie and then I'm like, well, I'm gonna have fettuccine Alfredo, and that, it's and if we behaved like this in any other relationship in our life, we would have no relationships. If I had a hard day at work and I was like, well, I'm shutting down the clinic, I'm not gonna be a therapist anymore, I wouldn't have a job, right? If I got in a fight with my best friend, I said, we're done. But so none of us actually turn on our brains and work to minimize the harm.
When we come back, Molly tells us the best part about giving up sugar and flour.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
In her book, Breaking Up with Sugar, Molly CARMEL describes her own sugar addiction and the freedom she now experiences in her life without sugar and flour.
I travel and I go out to dinner and I order in and I live a big, abundant life, right? So there's nowhere I can't eat. There's, like I really, and the book talks about this, I really make this thing work for me, right? And to me, like, that is a relationship, right? Like, so this thing doesn't hold me hostage the way that my addiction held me hostage. Like, I am in true freedom. The luxury of not having to worry if something's gonna fit. The luxury of having the same size clothes, right? The luxury of knowing things are gonna, the luxury of not having to wake up in the morning with a food hangover. Like the luxury of my life, like bless it, the luxury of my life. It's like, oh, and then I'm like able to like wake up and be helpful in this world, which is kind of all that matters to me. Of course, those of us who are really sensitive to sugar, and in the book, I let you decide, right? Like you take the quiz. I'm not here to diagnose. So many of us are. But I think if you have the problem, the solution, it's hard to imagine that giving up sugar is like a better alternative than eating sugar, but that's what the sugar wants you to believe. It has us all in a total chokehold. It has us all in a total abusive relationship where we don't think our life could ever be better, where we think that would be a punishment, but it's actually a gift. That's a secret. That's the secret of this whole thing. When I think about my relationship with myself, which is so different today than certainly it was when I was, in the depths of this thing, and I think when you start to lie to yourself so early and you start to do these really unestimable things, it's really hard to have self-esteem, right? And the opposite applies, right? Because when we start to do all these esteemable things, we get this relationship with ourselves back. And so I think healing your relationship with food and healing your relationship with yourself go hand in hand. They go hand in hand, without question.
Once again, the book is called Breaking Up with Sugar by Molly CARMEL. Molly runs a New York City clinic for people struggling with food addiction, emotional eating, and compulsive overeating. It's called the Beacon Program. For more information, log on to beaconprogram.com. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Healthy Living. We'll see you again next time.